sandwiches, ice cream, coffee and snacks, and many other pleasing treats. Our foods are fresh and tasty, our drinks satisfying and refreshing. They're so good.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In.
And now, on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 55 of Average Joe's Drive-In. I am your host, TJ Washburn, and this is a reviewcast. I have a bunch of stuff to get through. A lot of kind of a mix of newer stuff and older stuff, streaming, DVD, and even a VHS of a film that I have never seen before. So why don't we jump right into things, and we're going to kick it off with G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra.
Technically, this unit doesn't exist. But if it did, it'd be comprised of the best operatives in the world. And when all else fails, they don't.
I want in.
Stand up! Standing in front of you are Delta 6 accelerator suits. Careful, they're worth millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars, got it! Oh, my bad. Won't have it again.
This is General Hawk. The mission is a go.
Here they come.
Go, go, go!
We're running out of time. Eject! Real American heroes.
Okay, that was crazy. What happened to you?
I went through the train. What happened to you?
I jumped over it.
You could do that?
This film was directed by Stephen Sommers, has a 118-minute runtime, rated PG-13, stars Dennis Quaid, Channing Tatum, and Marlon Wayans. I watched this one on Blu-ray. Synopsis. Armed with the latest in military and spy technology, the team of elite soldiers known as G.I. Joe travel around the globe to wherever their services are needed. In their latest assignment, General Hawk, Duke, and the rest of the G.I. Joe team take on Destro, a corrupt arms dealer, and fight the growing threat of the mysterious Cobra organization. I started watching this one once, way back when it first came out on video, and I remember shutting it off because I couldn't get into it. Me being me, I found a used copy on Blu-ray for a couple bucks, so I decided to be a glutton for punishment and give it another try. So this wasn't anywhere near as awful as I remember it being the first time I tried to watch it. Is it avant-garde cinema? Not by any shape of the imagination. It is, however, serviceable enough dumb entertainment. It's filmed well, and there's some really good fight sequences between Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. The CGI is all over the place. Some of it looks good, some of it not so much. The biggest part I had an issue with this time around is there's a sequence near the middle that just seems to drag on and on. It's where Duke and Ripcord are chasing Baroness and Storm Shadow through Paris. That part could have been cut in half and it would have sufficed. Overall, it's a modern-day summer blockbuster-type cheese, entertaining, but there's absolutely no substance beyond that. I will watch this again, and I'll be checking out the sequel when I can find it on a streaming service or really cheap on Blu-ray or DVD. My rating for this was a 5.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 5.8 out of 10. Up next, 2009's Abominable.
something out there.
It's coming.
The film was directed by Ryan Schifrin, has a 94-minute runtime, rated R, and I watched this one on DVD. Synopsis. After recovering from a horrific accident, paraplegic Preston Rogers moves back into the remote cabin where he and his now deceased wife once lived. When one of his new neighbors, Karen, is attacked by a gigantic ape-like beast, Rogers contacts the local authorities, but after the police, and even his personal nurse, Otis Willem, dismiss Rogers as a delusional widower, he sets out to stop the abominable creature for himself. This is one I break out occasionally. I've been a bit in the mood for monster and creature feature type stuff lately, so this one was perfect to throw on to scratch that itch. I remember being excited for this when I first heard it announced. The premise sounded badass, and the cast was full of horror legends. I went from excited to nervous when I found out it was going to be a Sci-Fi Channel exclusive. That's usually not a good sign for a film, but once in a while something really surprises you and it turns out to be rather enjoyable. So, I gave it a chance, and as it turns out, that was the case with this. While it isn't scary, it does have a claustrophobic feel to it, as it mostly takes place in a single setting with our wheelchair-bound lead, played by Matt McCoy. He spends the majority of the film trying to convince his caretaker and others what's happening, to no avail. The effects are well done, although it isn't really all that gory. The creature effects are solid, and what gore there is decent. Other than Matt McCoy, who gives a strong performance as Preston Rogers, the acting ranges from solid to passable. Nothing noteworthy, but it serves its purpose. Abominable isn't top-tier filmmaking by any means, but I enjoyed it for what it is. It's not a long film, so that also helps. It's a good turn-your-lights-down popcorn type of film. It's also interesting to see what they do with the Sasquatch Abominable Snowman mythos. They do a decent job of explaining things in subtle ways. I also liked the way they ended the film. It was fun to see a bunch of horror legends and cameo small roles scattered throughout it as well. Lance Henriksen, Jeffrey Combs, Paul Gleason, and a few others. Dee Wallace. I also would like to note how much I love the cover art for this one. It's easily one of my favorites of the last 15 years or so, as far as the cover art goes. That alone is what sold me on checking this out in the first place. That and Bigfoot has always been one of those things that creep me out. My rating on this was a 5.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 5.1 out of 10. Up next, 2017's Spider-Man Homecoming.
On the roost!
Hey everyone. I get to keep the suit?
Of course. Doesn't fit me. Just don't do anything I would do. And definitely don't do anything I wouldn't do. There's a little gray area in there, and that's where you operate.
What's up, guys? Wait a minute. You want the real Avengers?
But this does not mean you're an Avenger, in case you were wondering.
Oh.
That's not a hug. I'm just grabbing the door for you. Oh, all right, kid.
Good luck out there.
The world's changing, boys. Time we change too.
Listen, Peter, forget the flying monster guy. There are people who handle this sort of thing.
I'm sick of him treating me like a kid.
But you are a kid.
This is my chance to prove myself.
Don't mess with me. Because I will kill you and everybody you love.
The film was directed by John Waits, has a 133-minute runtime, rated up PG-13, stars Tom Holland, Michael Keaton, and Robert Downey Jr. I watched this on DVD. Synopsis. Thrilled by his experience with the Avengers, young Peter Parker returns home to live with his Aunt May, under the watchful eye of mentor Tony Stark. Parker starts to embrace his newfound identity as Spider-Man. He also tries to return to his normal daily routine, distracted by thoughts of proving himself to be more than just a friendly neighborhood superhero. Peter must soon put his powers to the test when the evil Vulture emerges to threaten everything he holds dear. I started watching this one at a friend's house about a month or so ago, but I didn't get a chance to finish it. Redbox was having a rent one, get one free deal, so I snagged it and decided it was time to give it a watch, a proper watch all the way through. I really like this one. I think out of all the Spider-Man movies, this one was easily the best. I like the fact we get a younger, high school age Peter Parker, which is what I'll always think of when I think of Spider-Man. I thought there was a good balance of comedy and action, the effects looked solid, the acting was good, and overall, the story was decent. The only thing I might really have any sort of complaint on is the 2+ hour runtime. While I don't mind lengthy superhero films, it did feel like it could have been trimmed down a good 15 or 20 minutes, at least. That's how I felt. I think I would have enjoyed it more. I think this would have really kicked it up rating-wise for me. But it does drag a bit in parts. Overall, it was good to see Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe again. It's a fun addition to the already great cast of characters they've got going on for the films. Again, I thought this was easily the best of the Spider-Man films to date. I liked both Michael Keaton as Vulture and Tom Holland as Peter Parker, Spider-Man. That's honestly the most important thing. They both pulled off their characters well and made the film enjoyable. I'm still a little bit undecided on what I want to give this for a rating. And while I did enjoy it, I'm not sure it's quite in the upper echelon of Marvel films. It's kind of on the cusp of the great ones, but not quite there. If I had to compare it to another Marvel film, I would probably compare it to Iron Man 2. Good fun, and it's entertaining, but it's not great. My rating is a 7.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 7.5 out of 10. Up next, 2017's The Hitman's Bodyguard.
I'm a AAA rated executive protection agent. And you're the most wanted hitman in the world. My job is to keep you out of harm's way.
Shit! What the fuck?
And
You won't last 1 hour without me.
Fuck you! Eat my ass! That's what she said!
Suspects are on the roof.
No odds in that, Joe. Just gotta find a more intelligent way.
Motherfucker!
Holy fucking shit. I hope they kill him, I really do. This guy single-handedly ruined the word motherfucker.
Tick-tock, motherfucker!
I was up here.
God damn it! I will bust a cap in your ass.
Have you ever said please?
Please, motherfucker!
Why are we always yelling?
Jesus Christ! Really?
rule.
This film was directed by Patrick Hughes, has a 118-minute runtime, it's rated R, stars Ryan Reynolds, Samuel L. Jackson, and Gary Oldman. I watched this on DVD. Synopsis. The world's top bodyguard gets a new client, a hitman who must testify at the International Criminal Court. They must put their differences aside and work together to make the trial on time. While I found this film to be enjoyable, it felt like it was full of missed chances. There was so much potential for this to be a modern classic, but it somehow managed to not quite click on all cylinders. You have a solid cast who are playing very much to their strengths, there's an interesting premise, and what appeared to be a good budget. Where this went a little awry and kept it from being amazing was the film jostled back and forth too much between the comedy, and the action. Many action comedies run into this problem. The comedy parts were funny, and the action parts are very well done, but there's no ebb and flow between the two, which kind of takes you out of whatever current mindset you're locked in. So while it still manages to be a good film, it doesn't quite hit that sweet spot it was aiming for. If you're a fan of these types of films, you will enjoy this. In the end, I feel like The Hitman's Bodyguard was maybe a little too ambitious for its own good. Still, I would rather see something new and original like this that takes a chance than another remake, reboot, or rehashing of the same old thing. My rating for this is a 6 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6.9 out of 10. Oh, I've been waiting to talk about this one forever since I started the podcast, because this is one of my favorites. And that is 1981's The Howling.
We've got to make them believe. We've got to warn people. We've got to make them believe. What do you see? We've got to make them believe. We've got to warn people. We've got to make them believe.
The Howling. Somewhere in this city, in this human jungle, it begins.
What do you see?
What's there?
What do you see, Karen?
What's there?
Somewhere in these woods, in this primal, sensuous, secret place, lies an experience too terrifying for words. And now, all anyone can do is watch and wait.
Tonight I'm going to show you something. Make you believe.
The Howling.
The film was directed by Joe Dante, has a 90-minute runtime, is rated R, stars Dee Wallace, Patrick McNee, and Dennis Dugan. I watched this one on DVD. Synopsis. In Los Angeles, television journalist Karen White is traumatized in the course of aiding the police in the arrest of a serial murderer. Her doctors recommend that she attend an isolated psychiatric retreat led by Dr. George Wagner. But while Karen is undergoing therapy, her colleague Chris investigates the bizarre circumstances surrounding her shock. When his work leads him to suspect the supernatural, he begins to fear for Karen's life. This has been my favorite werewolf movie for a long time. It's also one I haven't watched in probably 5 years or so. Like a lot of movies you watch repeatedly, you get a little burned out on them after a while, so your viewing becomes more sporadic over time. You tend to space it out more and savor the moment when you do sit down to view them again. I was looking through my collection and trying to figure out what I wanted to watch. I wasn't in the mood for something new. I wanted something fairly short runtime-wise, and I wanted a horror film. So, a pretty specific category of things. Now, let me tell you, there's a lot of options when it comes to that sort of thing, and that's when my eyes gazed upon The Howling. It was time. I'm glad to report The Howling still holds up for me enjoyment-wise, and it still kicks ass. Even if it does have some cheesy moments, it maybe hasn't aged so well in parts. I will be honest, I think An American Werewolf in London is probably a better film overall, but there's something about The Howling that really resonates with me more. I like both films about equally, but I've seen The Howling twice as many times. 90% of the time, when it boils down to the two, I'd pick The Howling. I always loved Dee Wallace's performance in this. I love the look better of the werewolves than American Werewolf in London. There's also something about the tone of the soundtrack in this that really seals the deal for me. It feels dirtier, grimier, which only adds to what I enjoy so much about the film. I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority of folks with my preference for this over An American Werewolf in London, but that's okay, to each their own. It's a dark film, and while it clocks in at about 90 minutes, it feels much longer. 20-some odd years after I first saw this one, and it still remains at the top of my favorite werewolf films of all time. There have been numerous newcomers, and none have managed to take its place. I will say Dog Soldiers has continued to creep up the list, and may one day overtake my love of this one, but that's not today. My rating on this is an 8 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6.6 out of 10. Up next, 2001's Blue Planet. It was directed by Alistair Fothergill. The average episode runtime is 50 minutes and there is 10 episodes. I've been really into these nature documentary series the last few months. This round was Blue Planet. It was very interesting, as most of these usually are, but there were a few episodes that didn't engage me as much as others. Overall, it's a beautifully shot look at the world's ocean life. It's well worth the watch if you're a fan of these kind of things. Educational and interesting, a series the whole family can enjoy. My rating is an 8.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 9 out of 10. Up next, 1993's Cannibal the Musical.
In the cold winter of 1874, 6 men set out on a journey through the Colorado Rockies. They were looking for gold, but what they found was that they were completely lost. About it now. Yeah.
I'm Alfred Packer. This is my horse, Leanne.
In the tradition of Friday the 13th, Part 2, and Oklahoma, comes the first intelligent film about cannibalism.
Gross, Packer!
So let's build a snowman, we can make him our best friend. We can name him Shannon, Shannon Wilson Bell. We can make him tall, or we can make him not so...
I'm shatterproof! There's nothing you can show me, I'm still standing tall, so you all can blow me! I'm shatterproof!
film was directed by Trey Parker, has a 95-minute runtime, rated R, stars Trey Parker, stars, sorry, my Mainer accent's coming out there, Trey Parker, Dean Barker, and Stephen Blackpool. I watched this on YouTube. Legally, just to give you guys a heads up, you can watch a lot of the Troma releases on the Troma YouTube page, which is very, very cool. So that's where I watch this. Synopsis. A man convicted of cannibalism tells a reporter his story, complete with singing and dancing. I wanted to watch this one again for a while. I used to own it on DVD, but hadn't seen it in years. That's when I got looking around and found out that Troma TV had it available for free on their YouTube channel, as I mentioned previously. This was released by Troma, so I thought it was pretty damn cool it was available to stream for free through them. Because this film is kind of hard to track down. It is available in on DVD. I'm not sure it's ever gotten a Blu-ray release, but you can find it, but it's pricey. So if Troma has it up for free, it's definitely worth checking out for free before you go track it down. This is one of those films that I think if you get, you'll love, and if you don't, you'll absolutely hate it. It's such a bizarre, weird film. It's quite gory in parts, but not in a realistic way. More of a corny, slapstick sort of thing. I know that's kind of a weird way to put it, but that's the best I can describe. It's actually used to enhance the comedy more than as a gross out. The songs are really goofy and catchy, and you'll find yourself randomly humming certain songs days, even weeks after you view this. I believe this was Trey Parker and Matt Stone's first film. You can definitely see the humor that's lent itself to South Park for so many years. It's very evident in this. Is this a mind-blowing movie experience? Not by any means, but Cannibal the Musical is a fun-as-hell low-budget film done right. For what it is, it exceeds on every level and then some. If you like any of their movies or South Park, this is worth checking out. There's no excuse not to. As I said, just go to YouTube, type in Cannibal the Musical full film, and then click on the link to Troma TV, and there you go. If you've never seen this one, I hope you enjoy it, and I'd love to hear what you think. So drop me a line on one of the Average Joe's drive-in social media sites and let me know what you think once you watch it. My rating for this is a 7 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 7.2 out of 10. Up next, 1977's The Crater Lake Monster.
Beneath the foggy depths of this misty lake lurks a creature ready to unleash its horror on an unsuspecting world. Crater Lake Monster, a beast more terrifying than your most frightening nightmare. Crater Lake Monster. Prepare yourself for the horror sensation of the year. Crater Lake Monster.
The film was directed by William R. Stromberg, has an 85-minute runtime, rated PG, stars Richard Cardella, Glenn Roberts, and Mark Siegel. I watched this on Amazon Prime. Synopsis. A meteor that crashed into Oregon's Crater Lake unearths a dinosaur egg. The heat from the meteor causes the egg to hatch, and the emerging dinosaur takes to snacking on the locals. This is a film I've known about for years but never actually watched. The cover art is something I remember walking by at the video store time and time again, and for one reason or the other, I never rented it. I was in the mood for a monster movie, particularly something I hadn't seen. After scrolling through the usual streaming services, I came across this one. It just felt right, and it was finally time to give it a go. This film is so cheesy and bad, it's actually entertaining. The acting is very wooden for the most part, the dialogue is cringeworthy, the creature is old school stop motion animation, which I honestly don't have any issues with. It looks decent enough for what what this type of film is. The script is all over the place. There are things going on that make no sense. The biggest highlight of the film for me was the comic relief in the interactions between the boat rental guys, Arnie and Mitch. It's very obvious they were in this film for that exact purpose. It's one of the few areas where the film worked well. The film itself is actually well shot. I think the version on Prime may be a restored version because it looked cleaned up for a low-budget film that came out in 1977. This falls into a category of film from that mid to late 70s and even early 80s that bordered on being cringeworthy to good. Films like Piranha, Prophecy, the monster movie, not the one with Christopher Walken, Grizzly, and The Creature from Black Lake. Those films were all campy, drive-in, late-night cable TV fare, and were actually pretty decent and enjoyable. This is slightly below those, but entertaining in a Mystery Science Theater 3000 sort of way. I actually would love to see them riff on this one because I think it's gold for that. If you took a bad but watchable Roger Corman film, mixed it with the above-mentioned films, you'd get The Creature from Black Lake. This is worth a watch, but more than likely a one and done. One of those films that's good to check off the list if you're into monster movies from that era, but that's pretty much about it. My rating on this was a 4 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 3.2 out of 10. Up next, 2007's Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Mr. Cox? Mr. Cox.
Give him a minute, son. Dewey Cox needs to think about his entire life before he plays.
From the time he was a boy.
Ain't no 6-year-old understand the true meaning of the blues.
I reckon I might.
I done a bad thing. Cut my brother in half.
It's not bad for your first time.
The music of Dewey Cox
Take my hand.
has had an effect on people.
It's the devil's music.
From the guy who brought you Talladega Nights and Superbad.
I've got to give up this dream. You're never gonna make it.
And maybe you don't believe in me after all.
I do believe in you. I just know you're gonna fail.
Columbia Pictures presents The Epic Journey.
Walking to the top of a mountain ain't easy. It's a long, hard walk. But I will walk hard.
Of the man who became a legend.
Walk hard. The Beatles want to hang out, so I'm gonna go do that.
With meditation, there's no limit to what we can imagine.
This Christmas.
I'm leaving you.
You can take the children, but you leave me, my monkey.
When it comes to music.
I ain't good enough to follow Elvis.
There's two things you need to know. I'm the king, and number two is look out, man. You see how close I came to your head? I can chop a man in half.
I'm guilty as charged.
No legend is bigger than Cox.
You met my new wife, Cheryl Cox Teague. Thanks, buddy Holly. What do you think, George Harrison?
The one, the only, Dewey Cox.
And thank you, Eddie Vedder.
Walk hard.
What happened to you, Dewey? I don't know, but I know what happened to you. Patrick Duffy took a beating.
Walk hard.
My life has been blessed. From my singing to my family to my sausage. It doesn't say Cox unless I say it tastes like Cox.
The film was directed by Jake Kasdan, has a 96-minute runtime, is rated R, stars John C. Reilly, Jenna Fisher, and David Krumholtz. I watched this one on Netflix. Synopsis. Following a childhood tragedy, Dewey Cox follows a long and winding road to music stardom. Dewey perseveres through changing musical styles, an addiction to nearly every drug known, and bouts of uncontrollable rage, until finally he wins the heart, but not necessarily the body, of his loyal backup singer Darlene. This has been one I've always enjoyed since I first saw it. I found it to be funny and the songs are catchy. It's also probably my favorite John C. Reilly performance in a film. His weird charm and charisma are perfect for the dumb and lovable Dewey Cox. This is a film I throw on every few years and revisit, and even after a dozen or so viewings, I still laugh my ass off and catch new things. I would put this up there as one of my top 5 favorite comedies of the last 10 years. If you haven't seen this one, I highly recommend giving it a chance. There are lots of little nods to other music biography type movies you may have seen over the years. You'll notice them when they come up if you do, which only makes the funnier parts even better. The acting's quite good overall, and it's loaded with recognizable talent. It was one of the first times I'd ever seen several of the actors in a film. Many are recognizable names now, and some may have even been back then, but I didn't know them yet. This is also a Judd Apatow script, so if you're a fan of his films, there's a lot of that same humor in this. This is a movie I will continue to be in my rotation of films, and I'll rewatch and enjoy every few years. My rating for this is a 7.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6.8 out of 10. And up last, I didn't even crack the vault open for this one, but we're going to review a VHS to end the show, and that is 1985's The Black Cauldron.
Legend has it, there was once a king so cruel and so evil that the gods feared him. Since no prison could hold him, he was trapped forever in the form of a great black cauldron.
The Horned King, that black-hearted devil.
Walt Disney Pictures presents The Black Cauldron. Escape into a world of darkness.
Are you coming? Me? Go in there? Oh, no. It's a terrible place.
A world of excitement. A world of dreams.
Aaron, the greatest warrior, a true hero.
And through the magic of 70mm photography and 6-track Dolby sound, you will be transported to a fantasy event for the entire family.
Look, sire, it's working. Soon the Black Cauldron will be mine.
In the great tradition of Disney animated classics, now comes the newest Disney spectacle of them all, The Black Cauldron.
The film was directed by Ted Berman and Richard Rich. Has an 80-minute runtime, rated PG, stars Grant Bardsley, Freddie Jones, and Susan Sheridan. I watched this on VHS. Synopsis. In the land of Pryden, lowly pig herder Taran dreams of becoming a gallant knight. Young Taran receives his heroic calling when the evil Horned King kidnaps Hendren, a prophesying pig that has been entrusted to Taran. Now, with help from his furry sidekick Gurgi and Princess Elowen, Taran must locate the magical Black Cauldron before the Horned King is able to use his mystical powers to summon an army of the undead. This is a classically animated Disney film that I'd never even heard of until just recently, which is weird because it came out when I would have been just about the right age to see it. Several of the podcasts I listened to had mentioned it on their top list of favorite traditionally animated Disney films. Many had it near the top. I was out and about and came across a copy on VHS for $1, so I picked it up, and my interest had been piqued. Excuse me. First off, this is rather dark for a Disney film, kind of in the vein of the original animated Snow White from what I remember. There are a lot of the usual Disney tropes of the goofy sidekick companion, the damsel in distress, and the friends found along the way that help main character realize their potential and overcome adversity. It really doesn't stray far from what you'd expect in that sense. As I said, it's a dark film. The Horned King and his minions could be rather frightening for a younger child. Personally, I thought that was awesome. There was certainly more of a sword and sorcery vibe to this than I expected. Being a huge fan of the fantasy genre, I was okay with that. It's not a long film either, which is fine. It's a quick, enjoyable film. While it's been a long time since I've seen the majority of classic animated Disney films, I'd have to put Black Cauldron right up there as one of the better ones. Maybe that's because it's a little darker. Maybe it's just because my memory isn't so fresh on the others. But I certainly did enjoy it. My rating is a 7.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6.5 out of 10. That's going to wrap up this review cast. Thanks you to everybody that took time and takes time and listens to the show, listen to this episode. Thank you for supporting the show. If you want to contact Average Joe's Drive-In, you can get a hold of me on Instagram at Thomas Washburn Jr., Twitter, TWJ Author, Facebook, which is one of the primary ones I use, at Average Joe's Drive-In Podcast. You can also check out my .com, which is thomaswashburnjr.com. If you want to support the show, there's an easy way to do it. You get something out of it, and it helps the show. If you go to Amazon.com, you can find my books in both paperback and Kindle format. Just type in Thomas Washburn Jr. or go to thomaswashburnjr.com and go to the link section. If you can purchase the books, but if you are a Kindle Unlimited or a Amazon Prime member, you can read the books for free on Kindle. And when you do that, I get paid because they reimburse me by the number of pages read. So it doesn't cost you anything outside of what you're normally doing, and it helps the show as I'm trying to put that money back into the podcast. I'd also like to thank my sponsors, the Maine Cannababes. Go check out www.maincannababes.com. They just made some announcements today about the upcoming ladies that will be modeling for the 2019 calendar that's coming up. There's also, again, lots of awesome information on that page. Good resources for things you might need to find out. They keep things pretty up to date as far as what's going on, different legislation, laws, all that sort of thing. So again, maincannababes.com. I'd like to, again, thank you all for listening to the show and supporting it. And I love to hear from you guys. So please hit me up on whatever social media platform is your poison. Thursday's episode will be with Jamie Gagnon from the new hit television show 911. He'll be in talking with me a little bit about what he's doing on the show and what he's been up to since the last time we talked. That's going to be a lot of fun. That episode will be up Thursday, which is why the review cast is before that. And I'm sure you are sick of hearing me talk, so I'm just going to leave you kids with this. Remember, kids, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. And I will see you sexy animals on the flip side.
It's intermission. Rise and stretch time. Time to refresh yourself and visit our snack bar. Got a yen for hot popcorn? Your favorite soft drinks are sparkling cold. The juicy Frank sizzling hot. There's delicious coffee, freshly brewed, and all kinds of ice cream and candy to tempt you. Showtime will be announced loud and clear to get you back to your car in time. So stretch your legs. Come to the snack bar now.